Check, 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 check. Hey folks, welcome back. Today we're talking about two legends, two brothers actually, those who shaped the Indian imagination and perhaps the entire era from the 60s to the 90s in two very different ways. One, a quiet architect of fictional towns armed with a pen, and the other, a sniper with a paintbrush with his crosshair on Indian politics. Yup, we're talking about RK Narayan and RK Laxman. And if you didn't guess, you probably just read the title. One wrote stories and the other drew truth. Somehow, between Malgudi's dusty lanes and the common man's deadpan stare, these two brothers captured the heart, soul, and absolute ridiculousness of 20th century India. So grab some chai, settle in, because we are going deep today. Not just into who they were, but how their work still lingers in our lives, like a half remembered childhood smell. Picture this: colonial Madras, a fairly well off household in the early 1900s, where the scent of ink probably mixed with the smell of filter coffee. In this modest South Indian setting, two brothers are born. Rasipuram Krishnaswamy Iyer Narayan Swamy, who would simplify his name to R.K. Narayan, and Rasipuram Krishnaswamy Lakshman, who wouldn't simplify much except the socio-political situation. Narayan was older, slightly bookish, and quietly observant. He would often spend hours watching people in a marketplace just to get a character's walk right. Lakshman, on the other hand, was a mischief maker. He had a knack for history, but also in literature. It's fascinating, right? One family, two artists, both in love with India and both allergic to pretense, but each walking a completely different creative road. Let's start with Narayan. You ever heard the phrase, nothing happens but everything happens? That's how a lot of his stories feel. His fictional town, Malgudi, wasn't just a setting, it was a living, breathing character. There's Swami, the 10-year-old boy who hates Mondays and authority, basically the Bart Simpson of India without skateboards. There's the talkative man who somehow ends up in the weirdest situations, like getting chased by a tiger or explaining philosophy to a ghost. There's Raju the guide, whose life is basically one long existential oops. This goes to show that Narayan wasn't flashy. His writing didn't scream, it murmured. Nothing happens, but everything happens. It's like listening to your grandfather tell a story. There's a slow build, some chuckles, maybe a twist. And in the end, you're not sure you learned anything, but you feel a bit wiser. He didn't judge his characters even when they messed up royally. He just laid their flaws bare and let you decide. That's the Narayan way, not to preach but gently peel. His stories weren't about revolutions, more so about internal rebellions, like a boy skipping homework or a man lying about being a holy man until he sort of becomes one. People stumbling towards redemption or just acceptance. That's his magic. He wrote the extraordinary into the ordinary. He made you care about somebody struggling to buy a sari. He made you reflect on a man obsessed with money who ends up poorer in spirit. He made Malgudi feel like your hometown, even if you've never gone south of Delhi. Now enter RK Lakshman. When Narayan gives you novels, Lakshman gives you a singular frame. When Narayan lets his characters speak, Lakshman's hero, the common man, never said a word. Yet that silence was deafening. The common man wore a checkered coat, a dhoti, thick glasses, and was always on the margins of the cartoon, never witnessing, never acting, never the frame of focus, just like us. He watched politicians lie. He watched prices rise. He watched logic collapse in a pothole of bureaucracy. And his genius? He never changed. For over 50 years, this little guy just stood there the India of the India of the modern day, quote unquote, changed. He was just shining a really bright flashlight on the cockroaches, Lakshman. He never tried to burn down the system. His satire was sharp but never cruel. It was a visual form of resistance, kind of a social x ray. You'd flipped through the TOI, Times of India, glance at the corner, and there he was, looking at the same nonsense as you were, but with the world's most expressive silence. So let's pause here. Two brothers, two artists, same country, different weapons. While Narayan wrote novels and short stories, Lakshman preferred cartoons and illustrations. Their pacing was also very wildly off. Narayan liked a slow burn, while Lakshman would give you an instant jab. Narayan's tone was often quite clear, warm, ironic, and reflective. Lakshman was more satirical, dry, biting, and often mysterious. Narayan's heroes were everyday dreamers and drifters, while Lakshman's often featured a silent, suffering observer. Narayan invites you into his world, offers a seat, maybe a banana leaf meal, and tells you about Swami's latest prank. Lakshman shows you the world you're already in and dares you to laugh before you cry. Together, they speak volumes. Speaking of togetherness, they both also worked together on quite a few projects. Lakshman illustrated most of Narayan's works, and Narayan often gave the one liners for some of the Common Man cartoons. In an India now drowning in hot takes, breaking news, TikTok deepfakes, there's something incredibly grounding about these two role models of mine. Narayan reminds us that we're all carrying stories inside us, in our hearts, how even the smallest mishaps can become happy accidents, as Bob Ross said, if you just change your perspective on them. Lakshman reminds us that we're all being lied to and we know it, and we can do nothing about it at all. And maybe that's why they still hit different. Because India hasn't stopped being absurd, and it has, in fact, I'd say, stopped being tender. We're still caught in that dance between hope and cynicism, and somehow these two brothers nailed that mood decades ago. With no Wi Fi, Netflix, no trending hashtags, just ink and insight. So here's to RK Narayan, who made you fall in love with a fictional town that somehow felt more real than the city outside your window. And here's to Lakshman, who made you laugh at a system that often forgets you exist, and gave you someone who never stopped watching on your behalf. Two brothers, one with a novel, one with a cartoon, and both in their own way held up a mirror to India and to us, not to judge, but to remind us that we are not alone, and that our quiet struggles, our tiny triumphs, our shared exasperation, all of it matters. And sometimes that's enough. Thanks for listening. If you liked this, I may do more episodes similar to this in the future. Share it with someone who still remembers Malgudi days, even if it's just as a fifth grade supplementary reader, or someone who silently chuckles at every headline and just knows what the common man would say, even if it has been a long time since he spoke. Until next time,